All right. Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome to our Friday Tech Talk here at the Tech Academy. I appreciate everybody coming today. We're welcomed today by Grant Mortimer. He's actually a friend of mine here in Portland. He's a UI UX designer here at a company called CD Baby. He's going to tell us a little bit about how he got his start in the tech world and basically what it actually looks like to be a UI UX developer or designer in the industry today. So we're going to have a moment at the end for questions. So if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to add them in the chat box, or you can hold them to the end, and we're going to save some time for that. So without any further ado, Grant, I will let you take it away.
Sounds good. All right, let's see if this works as planned. How's it looking?
Looks good.
Cool. All right, well, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me. I'm Grant, and I'm going to be sharing my story about how I got a job. And so, yeah, along the way, I'm just going to share some key points and highlight some lessons that I learned, and as well as talk a little bit more about what I do at CD Baby. So yeah, I'm a UX designer at CD Baby, and that's located in Portland, Oregon. That's where I live as well. And let me just start by asking if there are any UXers in the audience here, or like front end specialists, or you like raise your hand in the chat in the window.
I see one. I see at least one there. I see Brett's got a hand up at least.
Nice. Well, great. Okay. Yeah, so CD Baby is an independent music distribution company. So what we do is musicians who want to get out their music, like their albums or their singles, will come to our website and upload their audio and their art and get it distributed to Spotify and iTunes and all the major distribution platforms. So yeah, as a musician myself, I really connected with the culture and the mission, and yeah, so at CD Baby, I would consider myself more of a generalist in terms of like UI UX. So the bulk of my work is UI design, but me and my colleague, the two UX designers on the products team, are currently working to build out a research program as well. So my background is not in technology per se. I studied liberal arts at a small liberal arts college, St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland. And there I studied philosophy, psychology, and science, and music, and lots of different topics that were interconnected in that program. And yeah, I didn't find UX until I was exploring careers, and I happened to connect with an alumna in the Portland area who had a background in anthropology and got involved in Apple like before UX was called UX or was even a thing. And yeah, like a family friend at HP who did human computer interaction. And when I found out about UX and everything that UX is made up of, it was a revelation for me. My mind was blown, and I didn't realize that there was such a thing that was like such a good fit for my interests and encompassed all these different things like psychology and technology, and also some aspects of art and science. And at the heart, it's about people. You know, we're making products easy to use for people, as well as making a profit for business. So it has a lot of different topics, and also it's just sort of topical. You know, everything in the news, and a lot of talk of ethics and like what are we building and why are we building it. So that was quite the yeah, it was eye-opening to find UX, and I knew I wanted to do it. So thus began my journey. So, oh, not ready for that. So when I was decided I wanted to get into it and I wanted to get a job, I would say along that journey, there have been like two pillars that have been sort of like the key points I'd like to share today. And I would say the two things that like were the most important for helping me, land an interview and get the job in the end were networking and skill building. I'll talk about skill building first because I think that's sort of just foundational, right? For UX specifically, I would say that the three foundational skills were our UI design, communication, and critical thinking. And I guess what I mean by foundation is if you are competent in these skills, these are not going to be these are not like job specific. I think these are transferable skills, and like any career you have in this field, front end, UX, this will serve you well, and you'll be very employable if you have this as a foundation. For me as a self-learner, it was really important to build a curriculum, and I think you all at the Tech Academy are really fortunate. You have mentors such as Forrest, and a great community here to connect with, and I think that's a great place to be. For me, that looked like a lot of books and online courses and doing individual projects along the way to build those skills. So I think, yeah, that's foundation. I think you guys are doing that right now, and that's you're doing it in a great place, Tech Academy, with lots of peers and people to share your work with. And then, yeah, I think the most important aspect of that job hunt for me was networking in the end. Oh, yeah, and I think another skill that will serve you in any situation, even when you get the job, is to always be learning, to have that mindset of learning new things and staying up to date with your industry, and everything's changing so quickly. So there's always so many new things to learn. But yeah, networking doesn't have to be a dirty word. So I am an introvert by nature, and definitely took me setting up systems and putting myself out of my comfort zone to network. But I think one of the biggest shifts in my mindset was not thinking about it as networking, or like not thinking about it as like trying to get a job, but all networking is connecting. And I think that's something that is really important to keep in mind. And yeah, in my experience, personally, I got really involved with the meetup groups in the area for UX, specifically in Portland. And there's a few that are really active, and yeah, I would suggest the same, just get involved in your community and put yourself out there. And yeah, if it's something that doesn't come naturally, I think that's totally fine, and doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. And my tip for that is to like set up systems around that. So I read this really good book recently called Atomic Habits, and I really suggest it for everybody. And yeah, one major point from that was 1%, every day, every week, every month, just 1% growth is all you're really looking for, and that can compound into some pretty dramatic results. So, what that might look like is, going to one meetup group, every month, or going to a couple, or, asking one question after a presentation, or like connecting with one interesting person. And that's really all it is, I think, is, yeah, you just try, it's just finding people who are doing things that are interesting to you, and, one person a month, try to connect with like an informational interview. And just I feel like that can have such a huge snowball effect, and that is my big tip. So how I got my foot in the door was, I think, a big result of networking. So someone I asked out for an informational interview, and I always saw her at like all the meetups, and we kept in touch. And she would ask me all about like how my career search is going, and she was the one who told me about like the job posting, and happened to be acquainted with the job poster, my colleague. And it's one. What I want to say is, I think your resume is not necessarily going to get you your job. It's sort of all based around relationships. And one fun fact is that like companies used to not even accept resumes unless the applicant actually knew someone in the company. So nowadays we have those automated, online portals where you submit your resume. But even how it used to be, you had to know somebody. And I think in the end, it's all about relationships. So that's not to say that your resume and your portfolio are not important. I think another thing I learned was that it's important to start early, both for putting together your portfolio and your resume, but also like putting yourself out there and applying for jobs. I think like anything, this is a practice makes perfect situation. So yeah, I think you're only going to get better like the more jobs that you apply to. And even if you feel like you're not ready, I think you should still be doing that. You should still be putting yourself out there and applying to positions that look interesting to you. And like for me, I had applied to a lot of jobs and was working on my portfolio. And by the time CD Baby came around, I was already gotten through all the bad cover letters and bad resumes. And I think like the development process and like the design process, it's an iterative one. So I think you can learn a lot, from any feedback you can get. And so yeah, that's my suggestion. So when the good one comes along and you see a position or a company that you really vibe with, then you can put your best foot forward. So I think even if you feel like it's like your portfolio or your resume or your is not like done, I would suggest that you apply anyways. And that feedback, you create a feedback loop that will I think only help you improve both your process and your materials. So yeah, I think those are the two main points that I would say have helped me, or just helped what I focused on in getting to where I am at CD Baby. I think networking and just not waiting until everything is perfect. I would highly suggest that. So yeah, I think don't be scared of networking. There are really some really interesting people out there doing some interesting things. And yeah, that's, just being curious about what's out there and what people are working on. And then, those compound, and you start to build your network. So at CD Baby, I'll talk about some of what I get up to there. And I will just say also that I think, you're all at Tech Academy right now and immersed in the process and learning a lot about, various aspects of development and design. And I would suggest, as frustrating it might be to hear me say this, to enjoy the learning process. and enjoy the time you have to actually dive in deeply to this stuff, because once you get into the working world, it becomes all about production and timelines and budgets. So I guess it's never as sunshines and roses as it seems like it might be. So yeah, I think try to enjoy the learning process is another suggestion I have. My experience at CD Baby, as the real world or whatever, as opposed to the theory, is it's not as a literal of a process as it sounded like when I was learning about it. So in a lot of what I had read and whatnot, it was like step A, step B, step C. First you empathize, and then you like diverge, and then you like come back. So it sounds like step-by-step process, and I think that's a great foundation to have. But once you get into like a company with, again, like budgetary constraints and like politics, it's not gonna always be like that perfect formula. So it might be like a piece of that, or it might be like a smaller chunk of the process. So yeah, I think inside, or like in the companies, it can actually it's just not as clean as like when you study it, I think. So yeah, just with that just with that context, it's not all a bad thing, but just with that context, some of the projects that I worked on right when I got to CD Baby were I think I mentioned that it was an internship, and then transformed into a job. But while I was there, some of the first projects I was working on were the UI audit. So this was for the purposes of coming up with a design system. And basically what we were doing was we would go through the existing website and catalog all of like the existing elements on the website. And the purpose of that is just to sort of see like how many different kinds of buttons there are in the wild, and like how many different kinds of tables and interactions and icons, and with the end goal of creating something that's more unified and systematized. But that was a project that I got involved with, and I thought that was it's pretty interesting, especially at where we are as a company. I think we're moving towards a redesign at some point, so it's great to like know what is how many different kinds of buttons styles there are, and with the goal of only having one. So that was one project that I worked on as an intern, and then another one was helping to set up the usability test process. So you might be familiar with usability testing, but we did it pretty like DIY way, I would say. Like this is our setup. We had a computer, we connected it to a TV, so we could sit in these chairs up front, and we would bring in actual users who we found through like social media posts, or we ended up working with the customer service team to have like sign up links in their email signatures. So we've been building this like giant repository of people who are interested in participating. And also at like events, we would put sign up sheets to see, are you interested in participating in research or like helping to make our products better? So we would actually like call them up and bring them into the office and watch them go through the album submission process, and record the screen while they're doing it, and really just sit back and watch them, go through the flow and trying to find like where they're getting stuck or like where they are having a great experience. But most of the time, it's such an eye opener to see real people using the actual product. Nothing is actually as clear cut out in the wild. So you can learn a lot by watching people actually use this stuff. And this is so this is a big part of what we do in terms of UX research and building out that research program. For the future, we're going to be looking more towards getting together a remote setup so that we can connect. We have a large international, a lot of international customers who use our service. So by going remote, and also because we have to in this time, that opens the door to connect with a lot of different users. Another project. So another project is I'm going to show you illustrates sort of what I mean by the design process might not just be like as linear as what you learned. So for this, this on the left is sort of a convoluted flow for how the CD Baby online store worked. And last year, I believe, we retired the online store, and it was my job to analyze the user flow and propose more streamlined flow as a way for people to still, access their downloads, and resellers are still like Amazon and whatnot are still buying CDs. So this is an example of if you're doing a UX course, you probably have encountered user flows before. So this tool, was pretty much all we needed to use in order to accomplish this project. And then, I think a majority of my day today is spent doing UI design. Currently, we're in the midst of overhauling our intranet. So the apps that our customer service team and ops teams are using in order to like help our customers on the phone, and also approve albums and like find if there's any problems with submissions. We're moving into a totally new database for that, and making totally new apps for that. So it is more true to process, so to speak. So I am like shadowing some of our customer support agents, finding those pain points, doing UI design, and collaborating a lot with stakeholders in the development team. But I can't show you that because it's probably confidential. Those are some of the things I'm working on at CD Baby, and I hope that you took something away from what I was sharing with you. Again, I think networking doesn't have to be a dirty word. There are a lot of interesting people out there and a lot of interesting communities. Meetup is a great resource. I know that there's lots of development-oriented meetups in the Portland area, and some really high-quality design ones as well. Keep an eye out for the UX Book Club, which I will be facilitating in the near future. So I'd love to have you participate in that. That's huge. I think, just putting yourself out there. Don't get too hung up on making a perfect portfolio or making a perfect resume or cover letter. I think as soon as you start practicing, as soon as you start, sending off those applications, the more you'll learn. And with that, I think it's really important to understand that we will all have failures, but I don't like to call them failures. I like to call them learning experiences. I'm not original. I'm probably quoting somebody in that. Yeah, I'll leave with a little a quote about that. Be humble when you stumble. It happens to everybody, and I think the more you can learn, the better. So yeah, that's what I got for y'all. If you want to connect, that'd be great. Thanks for listening, and I'd be super happy to answer any questions, have a conversation, whatever you guys want to talk about.
Thank you so much, Grant. That was an awesome presentation. I really appreciate it. We don't often see that aspect of the development, especially like in the testing and the user testing sort of phases. So that's interesting to see it from that perspective. That's really awesome. I really appreciate your time. We do have a question in the chat, and then I've got a bunch of them if nobody else does. But we are open to questions now. So if you have anything you'd like to ask Grant, feel free to just shout out or go ahead and add your question to the chat box, and we will answer them accordingly. Grant, can you see the chat box currently?
I'm looking at it, yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, start with Cody there. Is there any sort of resources for people taking the cybersecurity course to meet other people getting started? Interesting. This is something more attuned to, so sort of research for people talking cybersecurity course. This might be something we have to, we could chat about at a separate time, because this is a little bit maybe separate from what Grant, unless Grant, you have some great resources for, meetups, cybersecurity related.
Yeah, check out Meetup. I'm pretty sure I've seen one on there actually about cybersecurity. That as well, I would suggest, anything, like there's a lot of online communities that I think you could use as a resource, like Quora, Reddit, and just sort of, anything you can use as a resource, I think, to ask questions, any questions you might have, or talk to people.
Absolutely. And specific when it comes to students, maybe you're referring to other students going through a similar program as you. Reach out to us and we can connect you with those students. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. Reach out in any way you can, because there's definitely ways to find those students. And if you reach out to us, we can help connect you with other students that are going through the same sort of program. Casey asks, how can I navigate meetups with COVID-19 restrictions? Any specific favorite meetup groups in Portland?
Definitely. I forgot to mention that, yeah, a lot of the ones that I typically frequent are still meeting online. And I think it even opens the door, I think, to not just local events, but also more global opportunities as well. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, some of my favorite ones, Kaifu is one for design, and that is spelled CHIFOO. They have some great speakers and great events, and everyone there is in UX specifically. Design Thinkers of Portland is also a great one. And again, I'm coming from a UX perspective. But that one's cool. It's not always specifically about UI, UX. It's also a lot of service designers and people who are kind of pushing the envelope for what design thinking can do in the community.
Excellent.
Oh, and the UX Book Club, of course. Oh, also the also the UX writers community. Thanks, Maya. That is huge, and I'm really excited about UX writing. That's sort of a new topic for me as well, but it's something that I always think about with UI design and whatnot. Yeah.
We got a question from Brett in there. In your opinion, how important is the design and aesthetic appeal of a personal portfolio website in terms of getting hired?
Yeah, I think it's pretty important. But I think like anything for UX design or UI design, it's going to be all about the context of use and solving a problem. So in the context of a portfolio, I think you really have to make an effort to put yourself in the shoes of a recruiter, or a hiring manager who's going through like 20 to 50, probably more portfolios. So while I would say the aesthetics is important to an extent, you have a chance to kind of to show off the what you can do. It sort of has to be to the point and usable in that way. So as fast as you can cut to the chase, as readable, you can make your case studies as obvious you can make what your projects are about. Those kind of things, I think, I would say are more relevant in terms of the design.
Awesome. That's a good answer. I really appreciate that. I had a couple questions here, Brett, myself. You're a musician, which you mentioned, but I also, knew that already. But you got into this UI UX design position at a music company, and it seemed kind of coincidental. Do you think that your history with music played a big part in you landing this gig, or was that totally unrelated?
Oh yeah, I think it had a huge aspect to it. I think culture fit is really important as well. Both just identifying, if you get along with the people, I think you could find that out, in the interview process. But also, just is the work that they're doing something that you'd be interested in or excited to contribute to, or like have similar values. I think that's what I mean by culture fit. So as a musician myself, I really vibed with their mission and the community in the office, the people who work there. So yeah, I think that has a huge part to do with it for sure. And I was yeah, like it's just what you want to do. I think if you're passionate about like a certain topic or sector, I think that'll come through.
Awesome, thank you. I also wanted to ask, you were kind of a self-learner before you joined the community as a professional. What kind of resources and material did you use? You said you had some books and online classes and stuff. Was there anything in particular that caught your attention as being more valuable than others?
I think for some of the theory aspect, the books, there are some really great books out there. I think some of the fundamental ones for UX design are all the lists, design of everyday things, don't make me think. And I'd be happy to follow up also with you, Forrest, with a list of resources that you can share with everybody here.
That would be fantastic. I'd appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, but also just in conjunction with that, I think trying to apply that learning was really important. Like I was working at a coffee shop at the time, so I did their website. I was doing personal projects and some of the like design challenges out there. I'd be happy to send a link, but I think the one that is really popular is Daily UI is what's called, and that every day for like 99 days they'll send like a new situation or like a problem area, like design a checkout flow, or like design a login screen. So just like finding ways to practice, I think, the theory as well. And there are a few instructors and like YouTube channels and like courses that I specifically thought were especially useful. So I'd be happy to send some of those along as well.
That would be very helpful. I appreciate it. Yeah. Lisa mentions in the chat that she hopes that we continue to do these kind of streaming after COVID as well. And that she joined us from India yesterday, which is fantastic. We will continue to do these, as time moves on. I can imagine that these meetups will continue to be virtual for quite a while. And if they're become, more of an in-person thing, that we personally here at the Tech Academy record all of them and post them online, and we do host them for people that are watching them virtually. So that will be something that we can contribute to in the future. Grant, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the tools that you use as a UI UX designer. You touched on it a little bit, but what sort of what sort of tools are you using? Are you touching any sort of like programming languages, any front end languages, or are you using more design tools to create these designs? What's your base tool set look like?
Yeah, like I said, most of my work right now is doing screen design, like UI design specifically. So I find myself in Figma a lot, but I think beyond that, it's lots of time with people, right? So like I said, shadowing has been huge in like forming the right understanding for like what problem we're trying to solve. And yeah, like just mind maps to visualize a problem. Sticky notes are designers' favorite tool. And I'm not spending much time in front end coding. Personally, that is something that I do for like my portfolio. So I suggest that. But that's a great help too, because you know, you want to, if you're doing UI design and specifically working on screens, it's best to know, you know, like what's actually possible. So even though I don't use that in my job, it's still really important, I would say, to have a familiarity with. But yeah, mostly just like at the moment, lots of like UI design tool, Figma, yeah, note taking, and pen and paper.
Yeah. Well, I asked because some students maybe going into UI UX design or people interested in it might not have an idea of like, what kind of programming am I doing as a UI UX designer, which it could be some, but a lot of it, you have a development team. Like you said, you have a development team that handles all that. A lot of it is that sort of relationship with the customer and designing something from their standpoint, what they're looking for, and kind of theorizing it and mocking it up and doing stuff like that. Which it sounds really exciting. Something I would be really excited to hear more about.
We have a pretty collaborative relationship too amongst teams, as we only have 2 UX designers, one of 2, and then a small UI team, and we meet every week and bounce ideas and try to discuss like possibilities and limitations. So keeping an active dialogue with development and design is something we do.
Nice. How much influence do you have, say, on the design, the final product? As you've been there a while, but maybe you're a little bit newer. Like, how much influence do you have at this point?
Yeah, it varies. I think for something like what we're working on right now, it's like infrastructure redesign. It's a blank canvas to an extent, but there's also like it's not just like it's not like we're just making like the most cutting edge like service software, right? So we are also trying to do this quickly. So I think in recognizing that constraint of time and urgency, we are using a lot of like pre-established component libraries, such as what we use is the material design library. So if I'm like putting together a screen with like a toggle and some icons, then I'm going to go use the icons from the material design icon library instead of creating my own. So that in this project, that is those are sort of the constraints that I'm working in. And then also, yeah, just I think for a lot of these projects, it's not like starting from scratch. So a lot of it also is working within sort of a pre-established like design language. We already have like a style. So maybe this is one of those, it's kind of different when you do it on your own versus when you're in a company, or I think it would be different if you were doing it as like a agency or something, or you might have the license to reinvent that, the thing. But a lot of what we're working on is already out in the wild. We're just making tweaks and improvements. So yeah. So coming from a pre-established place, we don't really get to reinvent too crazy. We don't get to go too crazy with it. But that's okay.
That's awesome. I've got more questions, but I'd like to give everybody else a chance before I continue to take up his time. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask Grant? Grant, I got another question about, go for it, Rick.
Well, I was just, it's not really a question. You kind of covered the questions I was going to ask. But I think it's really cool that technology is an industry that applies to pretty much all other industries. So if you have a passion for something else, Grant has a passion for music, and he's able to take technology and merge it. That's a good thing to do in technology. So if you have a hobby or something you really like, and then you're able to take your skills to that, I think that makes for a great career.
Absolutely.
I think that.
I agree. I had one final question kind of about the testing process. You're talking about, actually sitting somebody down in front of the product and monitoring them and seeing like what they're doing with it. How often are you completely taken by surprise that they just can't, that they're like, their opinion is maybe vastly different than that of the designers? How often does that situation come about?
More often than you'd expect, I think. Yeah, we had sort of just been getting started with this testing program before the COVID. So right now we are like looking to make it more of a remote research system. So yeah, that's sort of like how we're adapting. But yeah, in terms of like being surprised, I think that that happens a lot, and it's always an interesting experience, and it's just further argument, I think, for why this process is super valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one example is just so we're doing this for our submission flow process, and trying to figure out the best way even to like use a button to save like a specific part of the process. So first it's divided into chunks. You might enter in like the album name and like the artist on it, and then move on to that next section. Originally we had it so that the giant save and continue button on the bottom and the one in that individual section were sort of like the same style. But people were getting confused about like, oh, is this going to take me to the next page, or like it looks like it's the same button, and where I'm going to like lose my spot. So that was one observation that led us to just like change the style, and I think it cleared up. It worked. So that was a small but interesting example.
Yeah, but that sort of user input is vital, because you're building it for the user, and if they can't navigate it, then at the end, like, not quite accomplishing your goal. That's exciting. That's awesome. All right. Well, if anybody else has any questions, any last minute questions, we can jump in now. If not, then Rick, did you want to say anything closing out here?
Just say that it was great talk, Grant. Thanks for coming out. And yeah, I think it was really, really good information for our students.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I encourage anybody, interested in UI design, reach out to Grant. I personally know him. He's a really great guy. He's awesome. Look out for his meetups. He's going to be doing the book club. That's what he had mentioned before. Grant, did you want to say anything closing out here?
Not particularly. Yeah. Thanks for listening. And I think you guys are in a great position. There's like so much that is possible, with what we're doing here. So yeah, definitely reach out if you want to connect. That sounds great. I think my LinkedIn still showing.
Yeah, it's still up there.
Okay, great. Yeah, so feel free to connect, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you all in the community.
Awesome.
Well, and Grant, where can we get information on your book club?
So LinkedIn will be good, but we will also have a meetup page, and I'll be sure to include the link on that list of resources that I promised for us. I would send him.
Yeah, I'll make sure to distribute that to all the students after this.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you all, everybody, so much for coming. I really appreciate you coming here. We have another Tech Talk next Friday as well, so we hope to see you at that one. But in the meantime, have a safe week, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Grant.